How many videos do I start off with the words, well, 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 well? It's been 8-9 years we've been trying to warn people about what's happening. We're trying to dispel the disinformation so that people can prepare and take care of themselves, prevent injury, and in the case of heat and radiation, prevent death. And when you're in record radiation and record solar heat, last thing you need to be doing is working on a metal water tower. In broad daylight, we really need roofers, and we need road people, we need anybody climbing towers, not to be doing that in the middle of the day. Thank you. But just to drive home the point, Mother Nature decided to back up the Higher Truth channel and decided to post yet another record. The problem is when your air temperature in the shade, by the way, this is shade temperature. When your shade temperature is 130 degrees, your ground temperature is 190 degrees. And that is something to take into account. And the surfaces absorb radiation better than the air, which is why the trees that face south, east, and west, those sides become the quickest and soonest to lose leaves, dry out leaves, and yes, trees are dying from the top down. If your tree is dying from the top down, it has nothing to do with the aluminum they're spraying. Aluminum alkalinity in the soil will affect the entire tree, not just the tops of the trees. Basically, the reason the tops of the trees are getting cooked is because they don't have any leaves to shade them. So the inner leaves stay shaded and survive this summer, at least try to survive the summer. Now, we've had a couple earthquakes, an increase in our subsidence zone, mini quakes and clustering, and we did complete, or currently we are completing, a Mercury alignment. This alignment is geo-effective, but very minor so. Another alignment that may speak even more volumes is the Earth versus Venus appears to be lining up with a spot in the solar system that has become seismically predictable. Just like Aquarius when this thing was entering, now we're out towards Libra a little bit, and this thing is exiting. More and more we're seeing that it may cross over in front of Uranus, not over the top like we early suspected it could. The other alignment with a major geo player was the Jupiter-Earth, but if you vector that one out to a fictitious zone, it does not really match up quite yet to the location of the brown dwarf that we have previously indicated. But this brown dwarf slinging cosmic rays into the sun, slinging cosmic rays into our magnetosphere, creating extreme ultraviolet, because when helium ionizes or the atoms split, we get various forms of radiation. One of those is extreme ultraviolet. This ultraviolet index used to only go to 10. In 2004, they replaced it with 11 and above. What do they know that we didn't? And what did they know that this guy didn't? And wouldn't it have been nice that this guy had watched the channel, or that somebody would have linked a video in his Facebook? Instead of dead, he would be alive. And do not fall for it. This was not a 5G death. Okay? There was no way. 2 other workers had to be evacuated off. This was a water tower. And when the Bible says it's going to cook 1/3 of the earth, I wonder which third that might be. I'm going with the middle third. I don't know about you, but that's a lot of heat, and heat kills. It boils your tidal pools, so to speak. It cooks your land temperatures, and it it kills your trees, and it kills your grass. So Florida generally receives some of the highest ultraviolet readings on the Northern Hemisphere map for the United States. Australia takes a big hit in its summer because that's when Earth is closest to the sun. So if we're having a brutal summer, you know what Australia is in for is even more brutality. But when you have extreme ultraviolet, extreme gamma, extreme X-rays coming from the sky, you'll get the tops of your trees to die first, followed by the lower leaves next. When we look at white light Mauna Loa, and if you go to Mauna Loa's website, you'll see a disclaimer that we put there, the Higher Truth put there, because we're the only ones showing this white light simulation. It's not even a simulation, it's an actual photograph of the inner solar corona. Now listen here, if particles light up, it can be used to estimate density, but on Mauna Loa's site, they made sure that you're not going to use this picture to estimate density of particles. What kind of particles should we be talking about? Well, this focusing cone, we're going to be going into it, so the edges are going to become more blunted as it points at us and not to the right or left of us. But the helium focusing cone has been photographed. Yes, this is a simulation taken by real data, put together by real computers, coming from real satellites. And you notice the little blue dot, which is Earth, has its own little focusing cone. So basically, when we get the lights, we call these special lights the false dawn or the false dusk, the zodiac lights. We think you're seeing Earth's cone, and that's what we don't think you're seeing anything zodiac related. People say that fusion happens on the surface of the sun. Well, it almost has to, but so does fission. We predicted that these loops were acting more like fuel rods than like collision chambers. But when you accelerate your plasma, your very hot plasma, when you accelerate that stuff and you crash it into other hot plasma sitting at the surface of the sun, how can you not split an atom or two now and then, causing a cascade, a release of neutrons, and a release of gamma radiation caused by particle annihilation. The other source of gamma is fusion. And so, yeah, we see right there where you see some of the greatest particle interactions in the loop. We see the greatest irradiance being produced from inside the loop. But, just look for the white inside the loop, and that's your clue where you have an increase in particle interaction. Fusion or collision, take your pick. I couldn't tell you. Now, people were commenting on how interesting a theory that we proposed, the first people to propose the theory, that sunspots were created by actual iron asteroids striking the surface of the sun, creating what looks like a dark spot, but actually filled with other kinds of energy. Just visible light is not escaping through the sunspot. But amazing how this sunspot looks awfully similar to a magnet underneath a bunch of iron filings. So we know that iron asteroids are highly magnetic, some of them, and when they hit the surface of the sun, they can fragment, and those fragments can work their way to the surface if the sunspot is close enough to the equator to create that centripetal force that does try to force things out towards the equator. And this little shape, the little egg shape, reminds me of something. Yes, it does. Reminds me of Sunny Side Up. And if this brown dwarf really were present and came through our solar system, its cosmic rays would collide with the cosmic rays trapped inside our magnetic field and that are also focused by our magnetic field and our gravitational field. Well, then when the helium washes through, we have these collisions with nitrogen, oxygen, protons, and electrons. That creates secondary particles, and that increase in secondary particles is just over a couple of years. So if you had a 13% increase, okay, in just a matter of 5 years, you can do the math. Over 10 years, that averages out to a 26% increase. Now, how are you going to handle a 26% increase in radiation coming from the sky? How are you going to deal with that? How is your body going to like it? Your body isn't going to like it. And if some of those, just half of those cosmic rays were neutrons, you could double the harm value. Instead of looking at the radiation made by protons and electrons, instead of looking at the radiation made by radioactive plutonium and uranium, you're going to double those scores with neutrons. Neutrons put out far more radiation than those class 1 particles. The extreme ultraviolet, though, is going to break down fascia in people who can't repair it quick enough. That would be people probably over 50. And a lot of men are having belly drop, even some women that spend time out in the sun. Their fascia is failing in the center line. They're getting umbilical hernias and midline hernias more than ever before. And if you're an internal surgeon, you know this increase has been around since about 2013, 2014. But also the inguinal area becomes pressure because of your belly drop. And the belly drop will then cause bloating, constipation, and gas, and loss of appetite. Yes, we passed an alignment. We think we passed an alignment between Venus and the brown dwarf. Venus is seismically effective, especially now since its orbit appears to have been stretched out a little bit further from the sun by this brown dwarf. And don't take my word for it. Just go to your Starry Night apps and compare it to your old stuff, and you'll see sometimes a 30 to 35 degree difference in terms of how far this planet Venus has ventured from the sun, how more elliptical its orbit has become. But when it aligns with this brown dwarf, we get an increase in our subsidence quakes, but we also get tectonic plates as well. And of course the Great Basin is alive and well. The Salton Sea is off to the right, lower right, but you can see all the way up into the Cascade Range. You see very active clustering in zones. And very, very interesting pattern. And thank you, Marcia, for the praise. She told me she thought I was brilliant because I was the only person on planet Earth to predict Arizona earthquakes 5 days before the Arizona earthquake. How did I do that? Well, it's not magic. We're also tracking all the debris this stuff has slung in, and if it's inside the asteroid belt at all, it would be pulling stuff in. But we're thinking that asteroid belt is as close as it came. In fact, we think the asteroid belt marks the place where it crossed our ecliptic. Crossing of the ecliptic is generally your perihelion or your closest approach to the sun. So because of the debris in the asteroid belt, we theorized that Planet X would not get inside the orbit of Mars, which it did not. Thank goodness, because Venus would be crossing our path right about now. But all of these cosmic rays and all of the debris that comes in, if we sustain an asteroid impact, it could be a blessing in disguise. So don't spend your time being afraid of asteroids. Spend your time being afraid of what killed these plants and what killed these people. And that is this solar radiation, solar irradiance, and heat. So this is a map showing you the alignments between Earth and the other planets. It does not seem to align with Jupiter with anything. So, but when Earth swings out into the position where Mars appears to be, if we can get in alignment with Jupiter, you're going to see some quakes. I don't know if Earth can swing out that far or will swing out that far. I've run this simulation through, but it's not enough definition in the simulation to allow me to make that call. There are better orbital diagrams, but they have tracking software, and I don't need any more tracking software. So the orange line is the confirmed alignment between Mercury, Earth, and Sun. That can be geo-effective, but minorly so, and only for 3 or 4 days at the most. So if we have an earthquake, prolonged earthquake cluster approaching size 7 that lasts for a week or longer, then you're looking at Earth. The only alignment we see is Earth, Venus, and our theoretical position of this brown dwarf, which every time we have these mysterious clusters of quakes, every time we have them, that mysterious object, the mysterious location, becomes less and less mysterious and more real. So this Planet X update was brought to you by the Patreon subscribers, who without them there would be no Higher Truth Rises. And I really thank us, either newer subs, because a lot of people are dropping off. They do not appreciate the COVID articles or the COVID videos. But what am I going to do? Sit there and be quiet about the greatest single most biggest threat to your lives that have ever existed? Maybe not because of the viral infectivity or virulence, but because if it's a hoax, that's a threat too, that your government would be doing that to you. So whatever it is, hoax or real, it's not a good situation, and the smart people are protecting themselves. And remember, hand contact is the primary mode of transmission of most pathogens. And until next time, be prepared, not scared.